you look at every single large industrial transformation and transition, it normally takes 2 or 3 decades from a technology being invented to the technology being adopted. And the biggest driver of that is how quickly organizations can reform themselves to be able to make those technologies a part of their day-to-day experiences and workflows. You saw this with the steam engine, you saw this with electricity, you saw this with the ATM, you saw this with general IT and Excel. And so the big question for us as a country is how we make sure that we are able to move fastest.
Welcome to the Implement AI podcast, the podcast where we explore the impact of AI on your business. I'm Piers, Linney, and alongside my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla, we cover the real-world applications and impact of how AI can be practically applied to drive growth and efficiency in your organization. We cut through the jargon to focus on actionable strategies and use cases to highlight the transformational power of AI. Let's dive into today's conversation. I'm Piers.
I'm Aalok.
So this is our first pod that we've managed to actually get out after New Year. We've released some of our greatest hits, because I think it's quite important sometimes. We cover so much ground in this podcast that if we just keep motoring on, there's so much going to be lost. So I think the kind of greatest hits kind of pods we put out there are actually quite important. This is quite a big one. We did our recent event in London. We're off to Dubai next week for our first overseas Your Future Digital Workforce event. And we're doing that with Venture Zone. So they're working with us on establishing our business out there. So we're working together on that as a partnership. So if you're in Dubai or UAE, actually, it's actually worth coming to Dubai, 3rd of Feb. All the information's online. We also have published what we call the AI Workforce Playbook. Great document. We handed literally physical versions out at our event, didn't we? And there were not
so detailed
left. So we're going old school. We're printing something more for Dubai, but again, we'll put the link in the description depending on how you're watching or listening to this, and it's also in the resource center on our website. So we've got quite a big podcast for us, really. So first, we have guests, some great guests, and now we've got a minister. So we're actually. We're making waves, Aalok. Our podcast is there. Yes, but this is a really interesting one. So we have Minister Kanishka Narayan MP. He's the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State AI and Online Safety. I'll call him an AI Minister for short. And he's going to join us today because they've got an announcement about free AI skills for individuals. So I'm not going to sort of... Okay, we'll cover that with the minister when he joins us. But then we think that's important, right? Isn't it? But that's one level. And then what we work on is the organizational skill, capability, if you want to call it that. So I think we're going to have a conversation about that as well. And we'll ask the minister to, sort of talk to us about his thoughts on that too. So hopefully it'll be more wide ranging. So it's quite an important one for us. So if you're new to the podcast, Implement AI, myself and Aalok, the co-founders, we built a platform called the AI OS that allows you to deploy digital workers in your organization, almost of any size. We've got up to FTSE 100s, actually, quite large customers. And we have a weekly webinar, which you can join as well. We have a newsletter, so sign up for those. And please, if you enjoy the podcast, especially on Apple, leave a review.
Exactly, because like with the AIOS, you can get like a team of 7 to 14 digital workers for less than like a single employee. So the whole point is like unlock your capabilities as an organization.
Right, so before we get the minister on, let's set the scene, okay? So I was thinking about this before this morning, and to me, it's like the jagged technological frontier. People's skills are jagged, aren't they? Very jagged in terms of like understanding technology. You've got people who say, I use AI, and I say in events, put your hand up, how do you use it? Most people use it to write a poem for their mum's birthday. That's about as far as it's gone. Then you've got some power users, like us, I suppose, especially yourself, Aalok, power users that are really changing the way you do everything using this technology. So I think what the government understands now, and I think all governments going forward are going to have to be really, this is going to be key to all government strategy going forward, and policy needs to focus on this, is trying to not create lots of, tech and coding experts, just normalize AI use, make it something everyone understands and not afraid of. Because AI, I did a post on LinkedIn about this, AI gives you agency. It allows you to do things you couldn't do, have skills you never had, but you've got to embrace and be proficient at this technology to remain relevant in the workforce.
Absolutely. So if you think about, like, let's do a comparison, right? So I always look at like Steve Jobs used to say, like, the computer's like a bicycle for your mind, right? Now, like, think about AI. It's like a whole level of that upgraded way. It's almost like a whole new way to think, process, and look through things in much more detail. But if you look at like media, right? People used to start with the first film, which was like a projector, isn't it, right? Then you moved into like, your TV, then you look at your VHS, then you look into streaming and different stuff like this. Now, in the same way, think about with AI, you've got so many capabilities where, you can actually like analyze very complex documents very quickly and get the feedback you want. Or you can use AI as a tutor to teach yourself different things and understand in different ways. And what we have to say is that it's very important that you yourself are basically the one driving it and giving the agency and having those things. And you don't use a substitute for your own thinking, but use it as an expansion of your own thinking, basically. And if you use it in that way where you've got enough context and everything, it changes the way you do everything. It's literally like it's saying that, okay, imagine you go for a vision test, right? So imagine it's like, okay, I can see across there, I can see A, B, C, whatever like this and different stuff like that. But imagine now, for example, you get a whole new set of glasses. It's like, I can see through the wall. I can see all sorts of other stuff. And I can see different things, right? And AI, if you know how to use it, it's like that, basically, right? And then the question is...
And you know the script in any language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got 360 vision behind you as well, basically, right? And then you can also understand stuff in different languages or different things like this. And you can create presentations that you couldn't do before. You create documents you couldn't do before. So your personal power to be amplified is just exponential.
Well, that scares a lot of people because they hear about it, they read about it, and I think that's something for techies, and it isn't for me.
That's without direct experience. My mum, for example, uses AI all the time. She uses it to like track her nutrition when she's like, her different meals and stuff like that. She's now, from using it within 3 weeks, she's increased the amount of protein that she has just by bringing that awareness of like logging the meals and doing different stuff. She also uses it all the time to like draft emails, different things like this. So it adds more confidence. It's like having an assistant. Imagine you've got a really smart assistant.
If you are nervous of it, it's about dipping your toes in, isn't it? And then learn it. And I think what we're going to go and talk about today, I think is quite important announcement actually in terms of access to skills and training that's free.
The thing is, we're in a rapidly changing world. So the best thing you can do is upgrade your ideas, your levels to think. And who knows, you could unlock a new opportunity, a new business, a new job, new possibilities, basically. There's never been a better time to improve your personal prospects, honestly.
So I think what we think is that increasingly, especially with the announcement today, the access to skills and training, lots of other places as well, online. I learn stuff on YouTube, okay? Lots of places you can learn, but these are kind of structured training programs that are going to give you the basics. So that's one level. So you have to be proficient if you've got a job today. I don't care if it's a physical job or it's a job in knowledge work. It's just as important to understand how you use it. Then I think it's about businesses. And what was interesting, and what we'll talk about, is that 20% of workers aren't confident using AI. And I think 1 in 6 businesses are not using it at all, which is insane.
That's just crazy, basically, right? That's like playing life on hard mode. It's like, oh, please, can I make things more hard for myself, basically, right? Like, why would you do that?
And I read somewhere that, I believe this as well, that if AI R&D stopped today, so all we've got is the technology we have today, the models never change, never evolved. It was probably 4 years of work, Aalok, for us to implement AI to deploy that technology into the economy and into your life. You should be embracing it. So this is not, the constraint it's not the technology anymore. It's us.
It's people's mindsets. It's people's like openness to kind of like get on with things and then start doing the things which work. And there's plenty of like low-hanging fruit which can actually make things meaningfully work. But sometimes people don't want change because they're scared of what it means for them. But that's because like they haven't fully understood that like it can mean promotion for you, it can mean opportunity for you, it can mean growth for you, basically, right? Like, because if the company does better, everybody can do better, isn't it? Right? So.
Well, let's find out what the government announcement is about today, and let's get Minister Narayan in. So we're now joined by Minister Kanishka Narayan. Aalok's told me how to pronounce your name correctly. MP. The Minister's the MP for the Vale of Glamorgan. Is the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for AI and Online Safety. So he actually covers quite a lot of grounds: AI opportunities, AI security, IP, the IP Intellectual Property Office, semiconductors, tech for growth, and online safety. So there's quite a lot in there. So thanks for joining us. I think you're the first minister, hopefully not the last, we've had on our podcast. And really, what we've been talking about in this podcast today is really skills. And there's an announcement today, which maybe you want to walk us through. And I think the key thing there is that only 20%, I was reading it earlier, only 20% of workers are confident using AI, which doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you. And only 1 in 6 businesses are using at all, which is frightening, given the power of this technology and where we think it's going and its impact on the economy. And then, a lot of SMEs, and especially micro businesses, we tend to focus on bigger businesses, but we're equally as keen to support small businesses. They're kind of structurally behind, really. So in our view, and we can talk about this, AI capability isn't really the constraint once you train people. It's then going to be adoption and the skills to embed it into organizations. So big announcement today, which I think is really quite exciting. And I was on the tech adoption review roundtables, and I was pushing very similar ideas to this. Well, mine was more about training SMEs, which maybe that'll come later, we'll find out. But AI is everywhere in the headlines. And we've got this research showing 21% of workers are not confident. An announcement today, which maybe rather than us going through it, maybe you walk us through it, then we can ask you a few questions about it.
Sounds great. And Piers, Aalok, it's great to be here. And the main reason I wanted to talk to you was because when I think about how AI will actually make a difference for the country at large and to people's day-to-day lives, it will not just be from getting the right, best, biggest models at the frontier, but fundamentally, it will be through implementing, adopting, diffusing AI right across our lives and across our organizations. And so this is really the central thing that the government is focused on. Today's announcements are effectively saying, if implementation is the biggest thing that will drive prosperity and dignity for people from AI, then the biggest driver of that implementation is the quality of our skills and the ability of our people to be able to do that implementation. And so today's announcements mean that we have a program where we're training up 7.5 million people across the country in AI skills by 2030. We're really totally on track for doing that. And so we now feel confident in breaking through that target and reaching even further. There's a second part to it, which is an AI skills hub. Anyone listening to this podcast can go online, find the hub, and start training on things that help them get up the ladder of understanding and capability as well. And the third thing that's really critical is that we want this to be a shared opportunity right across the country. And so we're putting 27 million into a tech local program, which will mean the graduate placements, work experience placements right across the country, regardless of where you are in your stage of life. You can now be a part of this opportunity, because if we implement AI well and in a way that's productive and enhancing of human capability, Britain is going to be much richer, and many of us will feel the opportunity of it.
Right. So the key here is that a lot of people, they're kind of afraid of this technology. And Aalok and I, we're recruiting people, training people as well, augmenting people with AI as well. So I think that the key thing that I did a post on LinkedIn the other day about this is about, it's almost like agency. So until you understand this technology, you're bound to be afraid of it. I did a session with some FTSE 350 chairs, slightly different. And what I realized in the room was that their fear of AI was, there was a linear correlation with their understanding of the underlying technology and their experience of it, essentially. So in terms of the digital workforce, is this the first step, or in terms of, because there's a lot more to do, isn't there?
There's a huge amount more to do. Like, this is the kind of building blocks of skills, of local funding to make sure that we're spreading this across early stage and later stages of life. I think these are the building blocks for it. But what you said is really critical. One of the things I find is that by calling it AI and talking about AI, we often focus on the technology rather than the use. The fact that there are people right across this country using spell check, which is increasingly based on an AI model. People call it spell check rather than AI, but that's AI. The fact that when we go to the doctor and we get a scan done, and that doctors across the country are increasingly using AI for diagnostic tools as well. We call it a scan, we don't call it AI. When people use Google Maps, all of us use Google Maps to get around the country and get around our communities. Underlying technology, AI. And so the thing I'm really keen on is, instead of talking about the underlying models or the technology, we talk about the use case. We talk about what it is that makes people intuitively use it, but also what then means that companies developing these AI models also focus on the use case rather than building what they think might be the right thing in the lab. So huge part of implementing AI well and in a way that speaks to people's day-to-day life is by taking their starting position, their workflows, their daily experiences seriously and building around them.
I completely agree with that, because if you think about it, we don't talk about electricity, right? We talk about a electric bike, or we talk about, motorized transport. or an autonomous car and stuff like this. And if you think about like Google, for example, like when the internet revolution came, that gave people access to information. So before it was like I would get a book or I'd get a magazine, then you have information coming fed to you. So that was like the new capability of like you can know what's going on or have information feeds. I think the way to kind of reframe what's going on here is you're almost giving a cognitive amplifier, and I'll be more specific about that basically, is you can actually, it gives you a lens to think through things first and also to see perspectives that you yourselves could not see because you're only grounded in what your life experience has been. So for example, this morning, I received a contract for book publishing thing, for example, I was working on, and I just put it straight into Claude and I was like, look, is there any unfair clause in here? Is there anything I need to be aware of in this stuff? I'm not even going to bother reading it first, basically. I work pairing my brain with Claude, right? And I'm like filtering it through and it'll give me the details. And I'm like, okay, these things I care about, this is like this. So I think if somebody understands that, look, whatever thinking level you thought you had, that was like almost like engine was fixed, but now it's like not fixed, right? You can actually see things you couldn't see before and go through much faster. So I kind of like look at it like that way, like putting on a new set of glasses with, you can see things you couldn't see before, you can hear things you couldn't hear before. It's that kind of dimension, if that makes sense, basically, right?
I think that's exactly right. And one of the things that's really interesting in that context then is how we make sure that our eye strength stays as strong, that we're training our eyes and not just becoming totally reliant on the glasses. The glasses amplify and support it rather than replace and automate it.
You're still the driver,
exactly.
right?
So in terms of I've kind of touched government on this, but your understanding, obviously you're in a very important role, and so you're clearly aware of the potential of the technology and also the impact of it. So we were every day implementing it as what we do, but we're big believers in the fact this is going to have an enormous effect on job skills, employment, the economy, business operations, and the UK as a whole in terms of our competitiveness going forwards. So I think when I talk to a lot of people, and I kind of get around, as you can imagine, they often say, oh, the government are nowhere near this. But that's just not the case, is it?
I obviously feel like we are pushing very, very hard to make sure that the UK is front of the queue when it comes to AI investment and when it comes to AI being productive for our country. When you think about everything that matters, capital, since I've been in this job for about 4.5 months, we've had 56 billion of capital investment in AI infrastructure in this country. We have made sure that the British Business Bank is now scaling up. I know, Piers, you've been very involved with it historically as well. The British Business Bank is now scaled up from 1.5 to 2.5 billion a year. A lot of that going into AI as well, investing in some of our best startups just recently. When you think about talent, we've announced there is a specific dedicated AI stream in the Global Talent Visa so that Britain gets first dibs on the best talent internationally as well. And we're doing a bunch in terms of our own domestic talent as well. And when you think about data, we're doing a series of initiatives, particularly focused on life sciences, healthcare, research data, so that our companies, our startups are first in the queue when it comes to the best quality healthcare data. So right across everything that matters, whether it's capital, talent, compute infrastructure, data, all the building blocks, the government is firing on all cylinders because that's what we want the economy to do when it comes to AI. And we're seeing the fruits of this, not just in terms of levels of investment, but you can see it, for example, the PMI Business Activity Index just a couple of days ago said business activity and confidence in this country is now way up over the course of the last quarter. And the biggest driver of that is technology. And so you're seeing some of this in terms of outputs as well.
I mean, Aalok, I don't know what you think about. I wrote again an article about this obsession often in the press with infrastructure and pipes. It's like the first internet wave in 2000. With Cisco as the largest company in the world. Okay, it's all about Cisco and ISPs and pipes and infrastructure. Yeah, cables under the ocean, and now it's really about AI models and GPUs and fabs and the underlying technology, which is great. But as we know, in the first internet boom, internet 1.0, the value was created in e-commerce. It was created in cloud, software as a service, blockchain, and that's coming in AI. I just don't think people quite understand that yet.
Yeah, and I think the key things you could think about is like, look, infrastructure and all that stuff has happened, which enables the next dimension. And you can think of a spectrum for every single person, every single British citizen. They had the opportunity to have like a calculator, which is basically like an AI that can help them do more stuff, and also a colleague or many colleagues, which are basically AIs that will actually help them almost be a team.
Sidekick, mentor, all of it.
Whatever you want. But I think thinking about those two dimensions, it's like, look, I want to be able to like, create a presentation much faster. I was talking with a friend of mine as a CFO, right? And he was like saying, Aalok, I need to give you a call sometime because I'm sure there's some things that we can kind of do. And I was like, do you want to catch up for breakfast? He goes, I can't, I've got to do my board meeting deck. And I'm like, are you serious, man? Right? Like you could use AI to like help do most of it. You've put the information on it, but the actual assembly of the deck, like that, you shouldn't be messing around with that basically.
Well, you should have told me that before our board meeting last week.
That was a different.
Yeah, I was there.
But then the whole point is, if you understand what the tools are, it's like being in the kitchen and like trying to chop everything manually versus I've got a food processor, I've got this, I've got that. I'm going to be the chef and architect it and have it. So I think the more people understand that, like with the AI calculators, the co-pilots, the chat GPTs, that kind of stuff, what can be done. But then if you go further than that, you think the AI colleagues, it's like, wow, what could I actually do in my department or in my school or in my organization or my nonprofit? Because ultimately how successful an organization is like how aligned every single individual is in the direction you're focusing and the force that you can do it with basically. And with AI, you can add in way more of that basically.
So let's move on to that then. So we haven't got the minister for long. So I think maybe comment on that, but also we're moving on to the R. So we started this business trying to help companies adopt AI, right? And the complication we often come across is not the technology, the capability, the opportunity, it's the ability to engage. So having people with the right skills, which is why it's great that people can find that free training and mindset, but then it's about the organization being able to absorb those people and the technology.
I think that's exactly right, Piers. If you look at every single large industrial transformation and transition, it normally takes 2 or 3 decades from a technology being invented to the technology being adopted. And the biggest driver of that is how quickly organizations can reform themselves to be able to make those technologies a part of their day-to-day experiences and workflows. You saw this with the steam engine, you saw this with electricity, you saw this with the ATM, you saw this with general IT and Excel. And so the big question for us as a country is how we make sure that we are able to move fastest, because when organizations can make new technology, in this case AI, a fundamental part of how they work by being able to move around it and make sure that it's the fundamental upside is creating business value rather than just doing pilots with things that don't end up working. That to me is the single most important question for the trajectory of our businesses and as a result, the trajectory of our economy. And that is a much harder thing because it's not just about an individual getting up and doing AI training. This interesting thing in this country is when you ask individuals in businesses how many of them use AI in work, you get an answer. And then you ask the business, how many seats or licenses did you buy? And you get a much lower answer. There's this 20 percentage point or so gap. And that's because a lot of people are using this stuff at work, but the organization hasn't been able to adapt around it and cater to the expectations and the demands of its employees. And so for me, this is a central question, and I'm really glad that you're focused on it.
I think what we found is it's a mindset change, isn't it? So I spent many years selling enterprise technology, and there were always projects, okay? Just like industrial revolutions, they happened and they ended, and there was a gap. Then you start another project. This isn't a project. This is ongoing forever, every day, and that's the key to it. Is about understanding that this is going to be an ongoing transformation. But Aalok, just go through. Maybe it's something that we can help the minister understand in terms of our experience of skills and the skills gap often in organisations.
So there's two things, right? So I think first of all, there's like a vision gap, right? Because like this is not business as usual. There's whole new capabilities that have been unlocked. And the thing is, like in business, like the more you can take care of your customers, the more customers you can attract synchronously, the more people you can fulfill in parallel, and the more value you can offer them, that will drive your outcomes. So I think step one is like there's actually a whole suite of capabilities which came about, and most businesses are not used to innovating in a kind of like structured way, or also unlocking new value. So I think step one is a vision gap, having the understanding about what's possible. I'll give one example, right? We work all the time with businesses, and we can attach one of our analyst agents, which will listen to all past phone calls or past emails, and they'll spot missed opportunities like this person wanted to book a high value treatment, didn't do it, or these people are buying this from you, and another research agent sees these other opportunities, and these are the cross-sell opportunities for you. It could be massive contract size and value and stuff like that. So that you couldn't think before. So that's one thing, as a vision gap, right? The second thing is then having having that internal vision that we as a company, we're going to look after our people, we're going to invest in people along with the government's help, and we're going to actually bring everybody to be like a forward fit competitive workforce. That then gives the catalyst to attract the right talent, where you can go to an organization which is going to be upskilled, where it's like, no, we're not going to expect everybody to walk manually up the stairs. We're going to have lifts. You understand? You know what I mean? Like, we're going to have AI essentially like cognitively to empower people in those ways. But then giving the flexibility to people to retrain, reclassify. I think having this kind of fixed identity is very dangerous. Like, for example, I see on if you look at the innermost loop of AI, right, you've got basically an AI creating AI coding, which is creating AI software engineers. That's the innermost loop, basically, right? And if you look at like Claude Code Anthropic, for example, they released co-work, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and then that was developed within 12 days. And Dario Amodei is saying that basically software engineering is going to be automated within 6 to 12 months. And I see panels on like LinkedIn saying software engineers almost having an existential crisis, like saying, how do I define my role anymore? Because I used to be a coder and I'm not doing it. And I was writing on one thing saying a robotic surgeon operating through a robot is still a surgeon, right? Surgeon mind, robot hands, basically, right? But in the same way, if you did by what you did before, you're going to have challenges. So I think having that kind of flexibility about what could I do, like we have engineers that find to us that want to be in customer forward roles because they can see that the back end side of it is kind of limited. So I think that flexibility and that vision, I think that's my perspective. I don't know what your perspective is basically on that.
I think that's super critical. Let me just say kind of one particular aspect of this is that historically, we had the last software revolution, software as a service. And in that context, even then, businesses had to innovate very radically. A lot of it had to be bottom up rather than top down. And what was interesting there was even then people had at least 12 to 24 months of breathing space. Once they decided we're going to move on, we're going to transform the business. This is the new SaaS platform we're using. You had a bit of a room to go. You had multi-year contracts. And so the transformation was difficult. But once you did an initial transformation, you had a slight period of stability. What's really interesting now is that the pace of AI model capability improvement is on a quarterly or 6 monthly basis at most. And so if you're in business and you build an entire business around the latest model, that latest model becomes N-1 generation within 3 to 6 months. And then you're behind the competitor who might be at N generation. And so one of the ways I think about this is I think it's completely changed the pace at which businesses have to think about the sort of stable period of execution versus the transformational period of ideation and innovation. And one of the reasons I think you're seeing founder CEOs being valued more now, there are lots of unicorns which kind of have had a really tough time with this new AI model capability wave. And now they're going back to the founder CEO, even though the company's matured, because there is no mature company anymore which can stably generate cash flows over a decade-long period. Every company now needs to go back to the basics and say, we need to be innovating and coming up with new ideas on a 6 monthly basis at most. And in some ways, that's really exciting because every company is effectively has to be a startup now and generate ideas and move fast. But I also think it obviously brings a huge amount of change.
So on the tech adoption review, which I think I was in part of the industrial strategy, basically, my idea, if you want to call it that, was to have a similar thing to the announcement today, but aimed at SMEs. Now, it's slightly self-serving, I guess, but it was sort of, you have a training for SMEs about what we're talking about here, actually, the adoption, the onboarding, leveraging people. I'd always say, where's the talent of the future going to go and work? Somebody where they've automated the mundane, obviously, or somewhere where they haven't. And the point there is what you then create, ideally, is lots of people who are training SMEs. That then creates demand, and that creates, companies like ours, I guess, lots of them, to help people then implement. Because you're right, most SMEs and micro businesses, when they come across technology or implementing some SaaS or CRM, for example, they bring in tech experts to do it as a project. Then they release them and they move on. Now, when Aalok and I engage with these organizations, there's literally nobody there technical. They're getting technical work. They're digital marketing assistant.
Yeah. But the other thing is, right, I think to your point, Minister, is that you said that like if you build it on like the past generation stuff and things like this, like, so you can't treat this like a kind of CapEx project. Like if you think about like when it was like Nokia had all those kind of systems to track the traffic, and then Waze came along with everyone's mobile phone and basically like, blindsided them, right? So you have to think about like what's not changing. So the model architecture will change, but your data scaffold, your systems, your processes, they won't. But then if you build it in a particular way, like we have our own system, which is built like this, basically, which always upgrades capability to deploy digital workers, it means that like you don't get stuck basically, because your digital workers just get smarter. So I think the key thing here is like making sure that businesses understand what's possible. They also understand a minimum viable technology understanding, like what's an API, what's this, what's that, what kind of data could there be? People say, oh, my data's no good, but honestly, it can be. And that nowadays with AI, because it can turn unstructured into structured, you don't need to have a massive data project to unlock commercial value. Like,
But Aalok, but the question for the minister I have is, do you think in the future, not holding you to this, that there'll be a similar announcement, but for training for the organization as opposed to the individual?
Yeah, you're totally right. And the individual bit is the starting point, is the sort of fundamental building block. But as I said earlier as well, I think you're totally right that the bulk of our economy is made up of small and medium-sized businesses. If we're focused on diffusion and implementation as the biggest driver of productivity in this country, then we need to make sure that the individuals that are skilled up through the initiatives that we have then are in organizations that are also skilled up to drive deployment and implementation. And so it's very much on my mind. I'll take your ideas away and reflect on where we can try and move fast on it. I will also say that there's a huge opportunity here, which is that a lot of our SMEs have been on this journey of, hey, our data isn't kind of on-prem, sometimes it's still on paper. We've been trying to move to the cloud so that we can interrogate that data in a deeper way and generate insights and do better business decisioning as a result of that. That journey's been very long and painful for a lot of companies, and we're still on that journey. What AI offers is a slight chance for us to leapfrog by being able to say, hey, you don't need a kind of deep reform of your entire system and database architecture today, but actually you can interrogate a lot of it and start to generate value so that you feel the upside of this and can then drive investment into it. And so there's huge opportunity at the organization level, especially for SMEs. I think you're right that we want to try and make sure we're doing even more to support small and medium-sized businesses in implementing AI.
We'll put the links in the description and we'll share them online as well, so you can access. If you're listening to this and you're an individual and you're working organization, you cannot underestimate the value of these skills and understand this technology.
Most important thing.
It's so important for your career. Anyone in the labour market of the next decade needs to have these skills and become proficient, but otherwise you're going to fall behind. And then secondly, organisationally, this is what we do all day. You have to embed this technology to remain competitive. Minister, brilliant. I know you've got to go. We appreciate your time.
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
luck with the announcement, and we'll do our best to get the message out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Great to chat. Thanks very much.
Well, it's great to speak to somebody who's, a politician that actually obviously knows what he's talking about, which is great. I think believes in it. And people often say to me, let's ignore like parties and affiliations and not be partisan. It's about, is the government doing enough? Right. Now, I know I've sat on the board of a government institution, right? And it moves at a certain pace. And we've seen lots of announcements about AI safety and various things like that, and had lots of conferences. So the policy takes time to evolve, and then for these deals to be done. And you'll see here, you've got the FSB involved, Tech UK, you've got Microsoft. There's also online training course companies like Google as well. It's all out there. It takes time. So I think it's great to see.
The time is now. But the time is now.
Exactly. And that's the other important thing, is now. So I think it's great to see that they understand that, and they're putting money into access to training. I think, as we mentioned, and we asked the minister, that they need to start doing the same thing for SMEs, and that's probably a bigger number. It's probably hundreds of millions, not tens of millions. I think that's really important. But it's a start, isn't it?
No, I think it's fantastic. And as I said, I'm excited to see, like now that the government's like putting the weight behind it, and they recognize the urgency, and then these kind of conversations, it's just like, let's see how it goes, because there's such an amazing opportunity for everybody.
So don't listen to this podcast and, oh, that's interesting, and then get on with your life. Go and look at it. We'll provide the links. Follow us on LinkedIn. It'll all be there, and engage with it and learn, because there'll be something there you don't know. Right. It's quite a long one for us. We know you're all busy. We have event in Dubai we mentioned next week, so if you're in UAE, join us the 3rd of Feb. Again, all the information's online. You've got our AI workforce playbook. Download that, go to our resource center and leave a review if you enjoy the podcast. So hopefully we will continue with our guests this year, and we look forward to sharing more with you over the course of 2026. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Implement AI podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how we can assist you and your business in leveraging AI for growth and efficiency, visit our website at implementai.io. Don't forget to subscribe to the Implement AI podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen, to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.